Probably all know, since you let the cat out of the bag, that I was not prepared to give the 3-hour course today. And when I sent out the email to everybody, I said it was the 2-hour class that has to do with buyers. How many of you thought today is the 3-hour class?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, so you got both messages. Okay, good. So good. I'm not prepared for the 3 hours, so today's only the 2-hour CE class. You don't want to miss the 3-hour class because that's where we're going to talk about putting all these things together. So I know I've thrown out a lot of great ideas. Hopefully you've liked some of them at least, but the end goal is to do 2 to 3 deals a month. That's what my goal is for every agent that I coach. If you're not doing 2 to 3 deals every month, if you're a full-time agent, now if you're a part-time agent or there's other things going on in your life where you can't do that many, but we found that that's the sweet spot. 2 to 3 deals every month consistently is going to give you a good income, right? And give you the freedom to be able to have a family and to have a life and do those other things that are important to you. When you've got some months where you've got 4 or 5 things going on, contracts or transactions, and others that you have 0. How many of you have ever gone into that seesaw effect? Yeah, I think most agents are like that. So if you work with me, I promise you, I will get you to that point where you can. Right now, I'm doing 2 to 3 deals, but I only work in real estate about 5 hours a week because that's all the time that I have because I do all these things. But I've set up my systems in such a way that I get enough business coming in that with the team that I work with, because I have a transaction coordinator, I'm always in front of my clients when it comes to all the decision making, right? And that's where your professional services will come into play if you follow what I teach you. But when it comes to the transaction itself, I've got other people, especially my transaction coordinator, that can help manage that. And honestly, if you think about it, if you're a professional service provider that's making, when you think even 2% on an average transaction, how much money is that? If it's almost 600,000, that's $12,000 in gross commission. Now I know you don't get to see all that because there's also splits that you have and other costs that go along with that. But when you're doing one transaction with a gross commission of $12,000, that's good money. You do that 3 times in 1 month, that's really good money, right? But the transaction itself is not where the value is, in my opinion. Anybody can do a transaction. You've all learned how to do it. I mean, we don't go to, like a lawyer goes to school for how many years? 6, 7 with their undergraduate and law school. They're spending a lot of time learning about a skill set so that they can get in court and do all the things that a lawyer would do or a CPA would do or something like that. Your job should not be focused on the transaction, even though that's where you get paid, because there's not really a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition, not a way to distinguish your value when it just comes to that transaction. Does that make sense? So what I want to help you to do is to find out how to become a consultant, someone that helps people get to what they want to accomplish when it comes to buying and selling real estate. The actual transaction itself is something that's actually pretty basic and straightforward. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't have difficulties during the transaction. How many of you run into difficulties as you've tried to get people through that? Yeah, and we all do. That's part of the game as well. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you start to set yourself apart from other agents and agent services beyond the transaction, that's when charging full commission and getting a lot of people to recognize your expertise comes into play. Does that make sense? So trust me, I will help you. If you give me the chance, my goal is not just to sell you our software or to sell you the book or all those things. We're trying to put together a set of routines and best practices with systems and automation that helps you to become the kind of expert that our clients want. And believe me, in the research that we've done, like I said before, there's only about 4% of people at any given time that want to buy or sell property. That's not a lot of people right now ready to buy or sell property with the amount of agents that are out there and the amount of inventory that we have. Okay? It makes what you're doing very competitive. And that's why the average real estate agent in this country, guess how many transactions the average agent in this country does? Anyone know? It's a little over 4. Over a year, right? That is, I don't know how you could live off that, right? And again, every agent's in a different situation. There's lots of lifestyle agents. They've retired and now they're making some, money after retirement, but they have their retirement coming in. They're lifestyle agents, right? They're just helping some family and friends out. They buy their own property, so that kind of gets into the mix. But for those of you that are doing real estate full time, and want to make a good living out of it, 2 to 3 deals a month is about where you want to be. We found that that's kind of that sweet spot where you've got enough time to live a good life, and you also are making good money, and you're helping and supporting your clients that are really looking beyond the transaction. I promise you, your clients are not thinking just about the transaction like you think they are. They're looking before and after that transaction about the impact that buying and selling property has on their lives and on their finances. And when you can tap into that need that they have to understand what it means for them, that's when you become an agent of great value. And that's what we teach. Now, I don't teach a lot of the transactional stuff because to me, that's pretty straightforward. There's lots of different nuances in that. Your broker can help you out, transaction coordinators can help you out. But what you need to learn is how to become an agent of great value and really focus in on a particular geographic niche as well as a particular buyer type, even though you can help just about everybody. So over the next couple of weeks after today, we've kind of gone through all the listing services that you can offer to kind of set yourself apart. We're going to today go over all the buying services. Next 2 weeks, please don't miss that, because that's where we're going to put it all together into how to generate the kind of business that you want that is going to put you in that position to separate you from all the other agents that are out there in services, and you get those leads that are, that you need to have come in so you can do those 2 to 3 deals a month. Okay? Now, I want to share one text that I got just as I was coming here, which was kind of cool to get a text like this. These are the kind of texts that I want you to get. You can do this kind of business. So this is what this person said. Hi, Mike. This is Nick from church. So they're actually a brand new family in our ward, so I didn't even know who it was. And I'm the finance clerk in our church, so you'd think I might know that. So I ran into Kevin the other week. So Kevin is the other finance clerk, right? We ended up getting onto the topic of real estate and how I've been wanting to get into buying rental properties. He mentioned that you might be able to help. I'd be willing to pay for your time for a sit down or something. If it's something that you don't do, don't worry, right? And then I let him know that I said, that's actually what I do for a living. You don't have to pay me because I help clients buy and sell their investment properties, and that's how I get paid. It all starts with talking through the ins and outs of real estate investing, et cetera, et cetera. So basically I have an appointment with them tomorrow night to talk to them about investing. Now, did that have to do with the transaction? It doesn't. And most of the time when I work with my clients, it starts with the reason why they want to buy and sell, not how they're going to buy and sell. If I catch someone that says, I found a house online and I want to go look at it, I'm already behind the curve. Right? I've already missed the opportunity to be with them during a time that they've considered why they want to buy and sell. Does that make sense? That's where I want you to be. And so over the next couple of weeks, after I talk to you today about how to help buyers, that's what I'm going to help you to do, is to tap into the reason why people buy and sell properties. And then for you to become an expert in one of those areas, even though you can help people in all different areas. You can help people that are upsizing, downsizing, investing, because I do a lot of investments myself. You can help people buy their first property. You can help people buy their dream home and their luxury home and things like that. But being able to focus in on a need that people have before the transaction even happens is how you'll get those 2 to 3 deals a month. Believe me, it really does work. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in today into how to help your buyers. We spent 4 weeks on sellers. I'm going to spend 1 day on buyers. Why do I spend so much time on the seller side, on the listing side?
Generate leads with sellers.
Yeah, you get actually more leads on the listing side of things, right? You get not only more leads from that because of the showcase of what you have to offer, right? And we can really showcase that through a listing service because, they're paying both sides. But then we get buyers that come in for those properties. As a matter of fact, Jeff just closed this morning, right? With a buyer that bought the house that we listed. And then we got the house across the street because our house was listed and under contract so quick that the neighbors across the street who already had an agent that helped them buy a property decided not to use that agent to help them sell their property, because they saw how well we advertised and worked with their buyers or the sellers across the street. We ended up getting 4 deals total out of those 2 properties in that one neighborhood. And now we've got 2 buyers that are already interested in buying the property that we're listing across the street because of our advertising. So when you start putting all those pieces together, it's quite amazing how easy it is to generate more and more business. But I'm not generating business because I'm out there hustling about, I want to help you list your home. I didn't even know the neighbor across the street. She saw what we were doing. By showcasing our services and them seeing it, it's a much more impactful and effective way to generate new business than it is just trying to convince people that when you're ready to transact, I'm your guy. Make sense? If you have to wait until they're ready to transact, then basically, remember we talked about those 3 value propositions? Timing, like convenience, becomes the most important thing. And that's why most of you feel like you're working 24/7, because if you're not able to help someone right now, right this minute, what are they going to do if that's really the whole reason they contacted you? They're going to call someone else, right? If you can't help them right now. And then you're out there running around trying to help people every minute of the day, and you don't have a life otherwise. So does that make sense? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into what you should do on the buyer side. How many of you like buyers? Yeah. How many of you like buyers even more than sellers? Anybody? Yeah. A lot of agents like to start on the buyer side. It makes them feel more comfortable because in a lot of ways, they're kind of dictating what they want in a lot of ways, right? I found this house. I want to look at it. They're calling you up. How many of you get most of your buyers when they've actually found a house online already? Right? So whether you get it from a buyer a lead source or even it's part of your SOI, typically they're out there shopping online. How many people shop online nowadays, do you think, when it comes to homes? Yeah. Have any of you had anybody that actually contacted you when they weren't ready to, haven't already found a house? Like literally called you up and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a property. Could you help me find one? Yeah, it did. It happened a long time ago. It doesn't happen so much anymore. Why doesn't it happen? Because the technology is saying, go to Zillow, look up what you like, right? Find what you like, and then call an agent, and that agent will let you in the door and get you in. That's why Zillow is dominating our market. I don't know if you know where Zillow is going with what they're trying to do, but now Compass is trying to compete with that. And anyway, hopefully you're keeping up with that. I don't want to get into all the news that's going along with that, but it's become such a transactional thing that buying a home nowadays is like going to Amazon and buying an item on Amazon, buying a TV or something like that. People actually get into this idea that I just click on a link and then an agent lets me in the door and then I tell the agent how much I want to pay because Zillow already told me what the house is worth, right? And really what the agent is there for is to push the paperwork through. And then we get into these unfortunate, we don't talk about it because we don't want to say it, but we get into these ideas that they have that we make way too much money for what we do. And that's what's happening a lot right now, is that even with the NAR ruling, it wasn't really about the seller paying both sides of the commission as much as it was about the clients thinking that we make too much money for what we do. And if all we do is a transaction, as a consumer, I have to agree with that. If you're making $15,000, even though you might not get all of that, but if you're making $15,000, I found the house, I decided how much I wanted to pay for that property. I just needed you to get into the door. I told you what I want to pay for it, so you put it on a contract that's already been pre-done. You're just filling it out. You're giving me some insight to things I didn't think about, like earnest money and how that works, or that I might be able to get, some sort of concession. That's great. But is that worth $15,000? I don't know. So we're getting into that kind of dilemma of where our value is. But as soon as you start to suggest that you can help them beyond that transaction, that's where they start to accept, oh yeah, I couldn't do that on my own. How many people could do their own taxes if they wanted to? How many of you do your own taxes, right? But if your taxes get complicated in any way, if you have investment properties like I do, and if I have, other things that I need to consider, I'd like to have a CPA there to give me advice, not just fill out a form. If I just have them fill out a form for me, maybe that's not worth what they charge me for it. But when I need advice and I'm trying to set up LLCs for all my different properties, and I'm trying to figure out how to pay less taxes than that I don't have to pay and things like that, I expect and hope for them to give me advice beyond just the actual transaction of the taxes. Does that make sense? And that's where you can be as well. Okay, so someone goes online, they find a house, they give you a call, they say they want to get in. What do? What's the first step in that process?
Spoken to a lender. Have you guys
Okay, pre-qualifying question. Do you guys do pre-qualifying? How many of you do pre-qualifying questions, right, on the phone? Have you spoken to a lender, right? Now, what's the other one? Someone else said yes. Are you working with another agent, right? Now, thinking about that from our perspective, that seems reasonable. I mean, why wouldn't I ask that? I don't want to waste my time. But from their perspective, what do they think about those questions?
They don't
Why don't they like them?
Because you don't know them, they just called
To
you.
make them commit.
Yeah, well, they're thinking of a process, right?
They just want to get in the house.
They just want to get in the house. Literally, I just want to get in this house. If you're going to get in my way of getting in the house, I don't like you already. Honestly, that's how they feel about it. Like, I can't believe I have to call an agent. Do you think if they could get in that house on their own that they would do it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that companies like Open Door are already introducing that into our marketplace? And it's going to continue as people get more and more used to going into people's homes or having other strangers come into our homes like we already do. Anybody ever stayed the night in someone's house before that you didn't know? Airbnb and Vrbo. Could you imagine 10 years? Or 15 years ago, was it 20? I can't remember. Time goes by so fast. But could you imagine 20 years ago telling someone, we're going to have a service that's going to be so prominent that it's going to start putting hotels out of business, where individual homeowners are going to allow strangers to come stay in their house for $80 a night? I mean, if you told that to someone 20 years ago, what would they say to you? That's nuts. There's no way they're coming into my house like that. How many of you have stayed now in places where you're in other people's homes and they've got their stuff up on the wall and in the shelves, and maybe they've got a locked door or a locked cabinet or something in there with some personal stuff, but for the most part, you're coming into strangers' homes, right? Does that seem like such a stretch now to have people that want to buy a house? Basically, there's a camera, and there's some sort of identification that you have to do beforehand. That's exactly what Open Door does, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. And then you walk through a house, and then you can decide if you want to put an offer on it, all on the phone. And if that's the reason that they use you as a real estate agent to get into the house and then to put an offer on the house, which now is on the app, what happens to agent services, right? It's going to be hard to justify what you're doing, especially to the tune of $15,000. And that's kind of, if you think about it from a consumer point of view, that's what's going on. So when you ask those questions, are you working with another agent? Because if you are, then I can't work with you. And, you go through that kind of stuff. It does. I know I know you wouldn't. I know. And I'm being sarcastic. I know. And, and I know Cassidy really well. The people that are calling her, because she gets most of her business from SOI, they just love her. And because they know that when I work with Cassidy, and most of you are probably in the same boat, I'm getting someone that's giving me a whole lot more than just opening up that door. But when we're trying to get 2 to 3 deals consistently every single month, can you get that strictly from your SOI? You're going to have to start working with people that don't know you and that don't understand the process that you have to offer. So you have to teach them. And that's what we're going to talk about. Yes?
So I'm going the other side of the Open Door sell side.
Uh-huh.
As a list, we're tasked with protecting our sellers' interests.
Yeah.
Protecting their asset. And if we're doing the right job on that side, Open Door is not going to be an asset that will work for those properties. Open Door is for a specific type of property.
Yeah. There could always be a need for it. But I do want to suggest that how many of you 20 years ago used a travel agent to buy your tickets, where you're going to go and stuff like that? Remember that? Where are travel agents nowadays? There is a niche for a travel agent. In certain companies, and especially if you're a C-class, executive, you're going to have a travel agent. You don't have time, to manage all that. But that makes that offering very narrow, right? Compared to where it is right now, where it's like everybody pretty much uses a real estate agent. And so I totally get what you're saying, but we want to make sure that people don't see us as being a very exclusive, high, offering for a specific class of people, right? We want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable working with an agent, not just because we want a job, but because they really do need our help, right? I think that's what you're saying, right? So yeah, that's what we get. What I'm getting at is that how do we provide that quality of service at that level to buyers who are literally going online, finding a house that they want to look at, and then when they call you, in their mind, they're thinking what? You're there to open up that door and get me in because I can't do it myself. So we need to change that mindset with them and with us. So we do ask questions, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of where I started. So we ask, are you already working with another agent? We do have to do that because if they are working with another agent, then we can't help them. Do they understand that? Not really. They're just like, I just want to get into the house, right? And so we have to watch out for that. Typically, when I talk about sales techniques and a sales effort, I always want to think about their needs before I think about my own. It's so easy for us to think about what we want. What I want out of this is I want to not waste my time. I want to work with someone that actually needs my help and is ready to buy. So the second question was what? Have you talked to a lender? And so we do that. And then what happens when you ask someone, have you talked to a lender? Whether they have or not, what does that sound like to them?
Yeah, an interrogation.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I just want to look at the house, right? Are you going to show it to me or not? If not, I'll just find someone else to show me the house. Now, again, if you know the people, like, Cassie, you work with enough people that know you, they just understand. I'm calling someone that I know, but I'm talking about beyond that. So we ask those kind of qualified questions. Yes?
In this day and age, and we're getting darker earlier,
Yeah.
I'm into forewarn. I want to know who I'm meeting, especially if it's after dark.
That is true. How many of you have taken classes where you've had to protect yourselves, right, in terms of that? Because that is a real danger. Luckily in Utah, it's not so much so, but in some of the big cities, I've talked to agents in New York, San Francisco, LA, some of these other places where they have to be careful in a lot of ways. Not saying that those places are bad, but you have to. Oh, everywhere you do, yeah. Yeah, you really should, yeah. So I love that, yeah.
We're vetting them as prospective buyers, but we
Yeah.
also need to vet them as to, is it someone that we feel safe enough to?
Yeah, especially if you're going out on your own. So I would never say that that's not a great thing to do. So that's really good. And then one other thing that we're finding out too is that, and this has actually gotten worse in some areas, and it's starting to come here, is that buyers are going directly to the seller agent. Right? How many of you have had that happen? Right? Many of the homes that we've sold recently have been buyers interested in our listings. And, as we talk to them, and this is how I explain it. So you can talk to your broker. So I'm not a lawyer and I'm not your broker. But basically, from my understanding with the NAR ruling is if I let them know I represent the seller, I can show you this house as a representative of the seller. So I don't have to get them to sign an agreement with me, a BBA, right? But I can't give them any advice. And I even tell them this so they understand. Like, I can show you this house, but I'm representing the seller. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions about the property. But if you have questions about how much you should offer or what the process, things like that, you need to have an agent that you're signed with. Yes?
So I'm in the middle of one of these now.
Yeah.
With an interesting culture. And basically, they feel like I should be available 24/7. So emails, text messages, they come at all hours of the night, they're here. So part of it, the education with them has been, continue to say I represent the seller. Their view is they should have 24/7 access to the house, So no, that's what you'd have if you had a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
This is what my schedule is. So not just the representation part of it, but the setting expectations with them of what you as a listing agent would do to give them access.
Yeah, that's important. Yes.
Are they just representing themselves or in their own contract?
They can, and of course you have to go through, and that's what this class isn't about that. So I want to make sure we get past that point. Yes, Bart?
With what you just said, I would anticipate the next conversation is going to be how you gracefully transition them from understanding that you are just the seller and I don't want anything to do with you to, however, we can still help you.
Yeah.
Because to me, based on what you just presented, I went, okay, great, I'll hang up, go find me a buyer's agent, and then have the agent call you
It's a
back.
fine line.
Yeah,
You
and
get to
so,
support them.
yeah,
You
and
get to set your boundaries.
yeah,
Back to kind of what your question was, though, if you ask the right questions up front, they'll tell you all the information.
mm-hmm.
So if you say, you know what, for me to better serve you, can you kind of tell me why you're interested in this house, what stands out to you? Like, start that conversation and they'll tell you if they're qualified. They'll tell you, if they have another agent. Like, you won't have to probe that. I mean, at the front, you can say, are you working with another agent? But more than likely, they will start telling you the information that you need.
I love it. I love that. And that's what we're going to get into now to kind of close the door on the discussion about being the listing agent and dealing with a buyer that comes in. Just so you know what I do when someone comes, and it happens almost every listing that I've done since the NAR ruling, I've had multiple buyers the way we advertise that are unrepresented, and they're coming directly to us. So I always let them know, and this is everything to me is a process. Everything is a process, and I hope you feel the same way. It's an SOP, standard operating procedure. So I tell them very clearly, I can show you this house one time. That's what I tell them. So I'm not available to them whenever they want. I said, I can show you this house one time, representing the seller. I can answer questions about the home, happy to show you around. Once you start having questions about making an offer on the property, or you want to come back and look at it again or kind of seriously consider it, we do need to be under contract for that. That's because I have a fiduciary obligation to my seller, as well as what we do in this industry to help to support buyers and protect your needs, is what I tell them. And usually they're just fine with that. And that kind of helps me get to that next point where I tell them, I've already talked to the seller and they are fine, and I have to let them know this, they are fine with me representing a potential buyer that comes in. How many of you have your seller sign dual agency or limited agency from the get-go? Anybody do that? I do. For as soon, yeah, I talk to them beforehand. Are you willing to let me help someone buy the house that comes directly without an agent? I've never, as a matter of fact, not only are they willing to do it, I've never had a listing, a seller say this, they are like, I hope you do. Isn't that interesting? They want me to find someone. And then we reduce our commission a little bit if we represent both sides. And then I let them know, as I explain it to them, because they signed the document, that there is limited agency with that. That means, that makes what I can do for you and what I can do for them a little bit limited, because I represent each of your best interests and I explain what that is. And then they sign it. So anyway, we'll let that go from there. You guys can decide from there what you want to do. But I did want to go through the process of what it means when someone calls you up and says, I want to look at a home. So some of you ask qualifying questions. I actually don't. And I'll tell you why. Because in my mind, when I show them what I can do, even if they might even be under contract with another agent, right? If that's the possibility of that. So sometimes I usually will say, because if you say, are you working with another agent? They don't know what that means a lot of times. Have you signed an agreement with another agent? Most of them have not done that yet, unless they started looking at homes. So usually my question is, have you already started looking at homes with another agent? Does that make sense? So that's a better way to say it in a way that they'll understand that. So I do ask that that qualifying question. If they say no, after that I say, okay, great, when would you like to see the house? Now, why do I do it that way? Why do I not ask them if they're approved for a loan? Or, what's their purpose or reason for doing that? Why is the first thing out of my mouth say, great, when would you like to see the house?
That's why they want.
That's exactly, you all said the right answer. That's why they called. If you tell people what they want to hear, not saying that you compromise your integrity or your ethics or anything like that, but if you let people know that you heard them and that you're giving them what they want, what does that tell them right off the bat? I like you. That's the first thing. Great, that's what I wanted, and you told me what I wanted, and you have to be sincere about it, of course. So I might say, of course, to them, have you already had another agent show you homes, right, or something like that? Then you can at least get past that piece of it. Then I say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So basically, when I talk to people about my process, I don't have to be in sales mode anymore. Okay, so this is what I want to kind of help you get over. If you are always in sales mode, you're trying to get the deal, and that's your anxiety of, I need to get this person under agreement, I need to make sure they understand that I'm going to be their agent and they have to pay me and all those and sign the contract, that kind of seeps with desperation, doesn't it? And it also makes them feel less excited to work with you. So typically what I'm going to say to them when they call me up is, great, I'm going to tell you now what happens. Now, when I do it this way as well, it doesn't sound salesy, and I'm just doing a job. And they expect that because they called me up, or how they got a hold of me, right? So I tell them what's going to happen next. This is what I say to them. Okay, I'm going to call the seller. I don't say listing agent or seller agent. They don't know what that means either, I found out a lot of times. I'm going to call the seller, right? They can understand what that means, seller agent, whatever. And I'm going to make an appointment. When is a good time for you to look at the house, right? Now, when do they want to look at the property?
About 10 minutes.
I'm there right now. Do you mind? Can you come over right now? Now, instead of me saying, that's ridiculous, there's no way, I can't do that, this is basically what I say to them. I say, okay, great. I'll call the seller and see if we can arrange that. Now, when I say we can arrange that, what does that mean? It's based on my schedule too. So, and I'm not basically saying no. You don't want to say that no to them. I say, I'm going to call the seller and see if we can arrange that. If not, do you have a couple other times that would work for you in the next day or two? Okay. And so I let them tell me what my 3 options are. And they'll say, well, we could do it tonight or we could do it tomorrow afternoon. Great. Let me check with them and see if one of those times work. Okay. And that's what they expect. Now, if you're in the car driving around or you're, out and about or something like that, pull over. Get to a point where you can write some things down, because I'm going to explain to you how important that is when you work with these buyers and how you can help them get to that next step in the process. So I'm just explaining to them a process. So now after I tell them that I'm going to call the seller and I'm going to find out the right date and say, okay, what's your name again? I get for their full name. If you don't know what their name is, I write it down on a piece of paper. Hopefully you can write it down, because our heads just don't have the capacity to hold a lot of information. How many of you forget things? When you ask someone's name and you're like, great, and you get off the phone, you're like, oh my gosh, what was his name again? Who was that person again? And stuff like that. So you want to write it down. I ask for the full name. Then I say, okay, I'm going to send you an appointment invitation. What's your email address? I don't say to them, hey, can I have your email address? Or, make it sound like I'm trying to get something from them. Because when you ask for stuff like that, what do they think? I'm going to market to them. So I just, okay, what's your email address? If you call up a doctor and you're making an appointment, what do you expect them to, they expect them to get for you to give them information so they can do their job. So I'm doing the same thing. What's your email address? What's your phone number? Do you have someone else that's going to come and look at the house with you? Yes. Okay, what's their email address and their phone number so I can send them the same invitation, right? Now I've got all their information and I get their full name. It's really important that you get all that information. Does that make sense, how to do that? These are sales techniques, put you in a position to get what you need without it sounding like you're demanding something that they don't feel comfortable with. Make sense? Pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. Then I tell them the next step in the process. The next step, what's the next step in the process? I'm going to call you back and send you that invitation once I make the appointment. So what I'm trying to get them to do is do what? Wait. Don't call somebody else. Don't worry. I've got you taken care of, right? Because if they're just looking to get into a property at this time and they're really anxious about it, which how many people, if they're calling you to get into a property, how anxious are they about that? Pretty anxious. So make sure you recognize that. I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna check on it. So then I said, I'll call you right back. I'll let you know what I find out about about getting into that property. Then you can hang up after you get all their information. Now, what's your next step in this SOP, in this process? What would you do next? What do you do next? Okay, call the seller and call him back, because that's what you said that you're going to do. I'm going to take one step before that. And so this is the step I do. I look up, sorry. I'm usually I do this even before I hang up with them. Sorry, I do this before I hang up with them. I actually, if I pulled over, I pull up the house on my phone if I'm out and about, or on your computer if you're at home. When I look at that property, I start talking to them about the property, kind of what you were saying. I want them to share with me what it is about that property that they like. Now, I've done this sometimes at that moment, depending on kind of what's going on, or sometimes I do it when I call them back. But my goal here is to find out what their interest is in that property, so I can show them other properties that might be similar to it. If you only show them that one property, the one that they asked for, then you definitely are the door opener. If you show them 2 or 3 more properties and you use your time and their time more effectively in that process, you're going to be the agent that provides more than just opening the door of the house that they wanted to look at. Does that make sense? So basically what I'm saying now is like, I'm looking at the property right now. This is in Vineyard. I know this area really well, so I kind of acknowledge that you've called the right person. I'm the expert in this area, even though you work in a lot of areas. So yeah, I know Vineyard really well. This is great. I'm looking at it right now. Oh yeah, this is a new townhome by Edge over by the lake. I'm just listing what?
What's on the MLS?
Yeah, what I'm seeing, right? Oh, I love it. Nice open floor plan here. That's a great price. I kind of acknowledge things that I'm seeing there, and then I'll ask them, what do you like about this property? Right? What are you looking for in this property? And if you can start asking exploratory questions and write those answers down, you'll start to get a sense of what they want without saying things like, I want to show you a few more other properties. Can you tell me how many bedrooms you want, how many bathrooms, what price point? We think of it in that sense. But in their mind, they're thinking, look, I just want to look at this house. I called you up so I could look at it. And now you're asking me a lot of questions that seem to be about you and not about me. But if I make it about them, so what do you like about this house? What's important to you about this property? And I might mention, depending on how they're reacting, that I might try to find a few others that are very similar to this here in this area, and then I tell them why they want that I do that. Because do you think they haven't already done that? Right? They probably have. So I say, I want to make sure that you're getting the best deal on this property based on what others are being sold for in this area. Now, if you tell them that, what's going on in their mind? Oh, wow, I've got someone that's an advocate. I got someone that's going to help me make sure that I don't overpay for this property. Oh, I'm so glad that I talked to this agent. Okay? So then after I hang up with them, I don't call the agent right away. I've got this listing up. I will go to utahrealestate.com, right, at least here in Utah, and you can do it on your own MLS, right? And then I'll look it up as far as the MLS sheet. How many of you look up the MLS sheet, right? Do you do it before you make your appointments? If you've read in my book or you followed my classes, that's what I do. Now, I've started using AI, and I'll explain that a little bit later on this, but we call this insider information. How many of you remember that from some of my classes? So what I want to do is I want to position my offering, a professional service provider, going beyond what they most likely saw. If they looked at the property, they probably focused in on two things. What are the two things they focused in on? Remember, they did a search for how much they want to pay and what area they want to live in. So I'm not talking about location, and I'm not talking about price. They've already figured that part of it out. Once they've narrowed that down to the houses that they looked at, and they want to look at this house, what do you think they're focused on more than anything else? Pictures, number one. Description, number two. That's it. That's the two things that they've looked at. Do they go through and look at all the other pieces of information? Most likely they don't, because they're trying to fall in love with this house, right? They decided that it's in the area that they want and kind of the price point that they want, but they look at pictures first. Remember what I said before when it comes to your listings? What's the number one thing that people think about or look at when they look at a listing? Curb appeal's number one. And then once they go to the house, you got odor, right? But then, of course, they don't do that online, but the other two they do, clutter and staging, right? So they look through the pictures, and they decide if they like that house through the pictures. So if your pictures don't look great, and if you haven't gone through that process as the listing agent, you've just lost a ton of business. I promise you, you've lost that person time and money because you weren't there to help them get their house ready to sell. That house in Orem, for example, that I told you about that we had just sold, they spent 2 weeks and lots of trips to DI and filled up 3 different storage units. We had them declutter their house. It was a ton of stuff, but the house looked great. Now the neighbor across the street that hired us, they wanted us to help them do what we did over here. She's a feisty Asian lady that she keeps just pounding me and stuff, but I convinced her to spend $13,000 to get their house ready to sell, because that's my expertise. That's how I bring value, and that's why she hired me. Even though she's even fighting me against it, she doesn't want to pay extra money. She hates that idea. But and her husband was there, and I kept telling them, you can list the house as you want right now as it is. You're going to get about $575 for it. If we do these things to the house, because they had a new roof put on, a new siding because there was some hail damage that happened. So they had a whole new roof and new siding in a 1990 house. And then they had a new kitchen from a flood that happened like 2 years ago. They've used their homeowner's insurance quite a bit over the last couple of years. The rest of the house was from the 1990s. Like literally, they had a new kitchen, a new living room, new roof and new siding, board and bath. I mean, the house looked great. And then the rest of the house, you would walk from the living room to the family room and go back in time 25 years, right? So we convinced them to repaint because it was every shade of brown in those other areas. When they redid the kitchen, was it the brown with the, all the old stuff? It was all the new stuff, because that's what you do. Now, guess why they bought a new house in Lehigh, in Orem? Like, how far away, Jeff, was the new house they bought? Like a mile away. Mile and a half away. So they're talking about how they love their house, and such a nice house. Like, yeah, why'd you move? And it was funny because her husband laughed at that time. He was like, yeah, we wanted a newer home, right? So I said, if you want to sell your house for top dollar, it's a $500,000. It's actually going to be $640,000. We're going to list the house for $640,000. In my opinion, that house is worth $575,000 with the comps if we left it the way that it was. So is that a big difference in price that they're making? So sorry to jump around, but I wanted you to understand how important it is as a seller agent to convince your sellers to make more money for their home. If you do that, guess what happens? You get more deals, and you get more notoriety for being that kind of agent, right? So anyway, getting back to the buyer side of things, the next step in the process with the buyer is to pull up the MLS sheet. And if you do this, how many of you work out of your car as much as you work out of your house? Anybody do that? So guess what? I don't have it right now because I used to put it in my car, but I act as if I do. But you need to do this. I need to do it again. I have it where I have a plug in my car and I can put a printer in my car. You should have, if your car is an office, put a printer in your car. So I print out, I'm using AI a lot now, so that's why I don't do this, but I need to print it before I can go to the house, which I'll explain. But I print out the MLS sheet. Why should you print out the MLS sheet? Any idea?
Well, I print one out and then I highlight all the things that are important that they're not going to see.
Yeah, so that's the
Like
insider
if there's
information.
weird- It's like if they've got an updated kitchen, quartz countertop, whatever.
Yeah.
A theater room, all the bottom of the description, then I highlight that.
Yeah.
And then I print it with the highlights on it. So I
Yeah.
have to mark it up.
Yeah, sorry I jumped around a little bit, but to clarify what we're talking about is that once I get off the phone with them and before I call the seller, the listing agent, which I do call, by the way, even though you can go to Aligned and and make that appointment, I actually print out the MLS sheet before I show the house, but I like to do it before I call the agent back, or the buyer back, and I highlight all the things on that MLS sheet, which the MLS is really good about. That's the strength of the MLS. I hope you all know that, is that they put all the detailed information about the property that you don't see so much on Zillow or Realtor.com or some of these other places. They see what they want to see, which are pictures. That's why Zillow does this. They see the pictures, the 3D tours like right there front and center. On the MLS, it's hidden. You have to find the link that says tour somewhere, right? So it's kind of the opposite. So printing out that sheet, I'm seeing all this really cool information that I know they didn't see. And then I highlight it. What is some of the information that they don't see that's important?
Agent comments.
Okay, yeah, and that's a little thing that the agent has to disclose that anyway, so why put it in the comments? But anyway, that's my opinion. But that's something, yes. Inclusions and exclusions, very, very good. What else?
HOA fees.
HOA fees. And how many times is there HOA fees and it doesn't explain what the heck you get for those HOA fees? I wish seller agents would fill out information a little bit more thoroughly. What other things? Taxes, right? So what other things do you see on there? Schools, right? The school district that's in there. Sometimes they see that because that's what drives them to that, but that can be in there as well. What else?
Mike, there's a new search on the MLS that will show you school boundaries and a
Yeah.
variety of other things.
I love that,
And
yeah.
so that was so fun to see.
Yeah.
And makes our job easier because questions we get that we'd have to go somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else. Now it's all in that one interactive
Yeah.
map tool.
Yeah. I found a lot of time. Oh, yeah. Do you have?
You can have animals.
Yeah. If you can have pets, exactly. Nightly rentals, or if you can rent it all, if it's FHA approved, or all sorts of things. So you can highlight all these things on there. Typically, when I print it out, I find a dozen things that I can highlight that are really good. Even things in the description, sometimes they're further down or they're in the agent comments. I'll even see things like, the alarm system or, all sorts of different things. And then inclusions, exclusions. So I highlight all those things. Now, what I want you to do, and this is why it's so good to print this out, because one, you can highlight it. You can't do that just having it on your phone, right? So you remember all those things. Write down, have a notepad with you. And you're going to call the listing agent and you're going to ask questions about the things you found here. So I want you to start writing down questions that you want to ask them before you call them up. What are those questions about? They're about clarification of the things that are in there or the things that are not in there. Does that make sense? The more research you do, the more value you showcase to your client. Does that make sense? Please understand that. If you were to hire a lawyer and you went in there and explained your case, and then they came back to you to tell you how much they were going to charge or what the next step is, and they didn't do any research on your case, how confident are you going to feel in their ability to represent you? Not so much. If they start to say, okay, I've got this, and this information here that I'm going to be looking into, that's going to be part of what we're going to do to help you in this situation, then you start to feel confident, right? If you want to give your buyers confidence that you are offering something beyond opening up that door, you've got to introduce the information that goes beyond even what they didn't even expect from you, because most of them don't. So I highlight all that information. The highlight reminds me to bring that up, but then I write questions. Like I put HOA $250, or I highlight that, but it says clubhouse. So I'm paying $250 a month for a clubhouse? That doesn't make sense to me, so I write down, what else does the HOA include? Does that make sense? If there's information on that that doesn't quite come out, it basically says that pets are not allowed or something like that. No pets at all? Is there a weight limit? You know, you start to think, because you know when it comes to real estate, the details, the weeds of this information where they're just giving you a high level view of it. Does that make sense? So I want you to think about what you would think about if you were going to buy the property. What questions would I have? One of the biggest ones that I ask, if the house is older than 15 years or even sometimes 10 years, and it doesn't say anything about replacement of appliances, HVAC systems, I always ask those questions. Is the roof original? Is the HVAC system original? Right? Have any of the appliances been replaced? Is that an important thing to ask when the house is that old? It is. How many of you think of asking those questions right before they go? A lot of times we don't think about asking those questions until when? Well, the buyer asks you, usually you're under, well, no, not even there. I found with most agents, they don't get into those details until they're under contract through due diligence. They're basically getting an inspector to come in and identify those things. That's a lot of wasted time and effort and money for the buyer if you're waiting all the way until then. Oh, I get the seller disclosures. Oh, look, there's been a flood here, or there's some settling in the foundation or something like that, right? Those are kind of things you want to try to catch ahead of time if you can. Does that make sense? So it's really easy to write down those questions. I usually have about 5 or 6 questions that I'm writing down. What does the HOA include? Has the HVAC system or any of the appliances been updated? You know, it says here that you can't rent without approval from the HOA or something like that. And it might be an investor, so I want to make sure I find out what exactly does that mean, you know, or things like that. I want you to start thinking about those kind of things that you would come up with if you were going to buy the house, especially with all the time you spent helping people buy and sell property. And I want you to write those down. Then I call the listing agent. So now, if I always approach every conversation thinking about them instead of thinking about me, because if I'm just thinking about me, I'm going to call up, I got a client, I got some questions for you, right? And what's the agent think about that? The listing agent. Oh, brother, oh, well, it's how do you get them to get excited to work with you? Because if you can get a seller agent excited to work with you, how effective is that going to be when it comes to making an offer and discussing what can happen and things like that? I love to get seller agents excited to work with me. So this is how I start. I've got a client that loves your house. And then I tell them all the things they liked about it, especially if I had that conversation with them. I actually show my hand, which sounds crazy, and let them know that I've got really interested buyers in this property. And I even tell them what they like about it. I've had agents tell me that that's not a good idea because then it makes it harder to negotiate. I don't agree with that. I think it's great to do that because then it makes the agent more willing to want to work with me. Does that make sense? So I say, I've got these buyers. They are excited to look at your house, right? And they like it because of this and that. They love the open floor plan. It's by the lake. They're actually going to use it to invest in this area because they have a kid that's going to go to UVU, and then they're going to, rent out the rest of the house with their friends and stuff like that. So excited about this property. And then I say, I've got some, they would love to come and see it. And then I don't tell them when they want to see it. When do I tell them, I want to look at the house? When I'm able to show it to them. Now, typically the agents will say, well, can you just do you just use Aligned, right, to set up that appointment? Like, okay, great, sorry, I should have known to do that. I act stupid, like, oh yeah, I should have done that. But before I hang up, I have a few questions for you, okay? And then I start asking those questions. And so I said, here on the listing, it says that the HOA is $250, but it just says clubhouse. Do you know if there's anything else included with that $250? And what's interesting a lot of times is I put the agent kind of on their heels a little bit because they're like, oh yeah, I didn't check that out yet. I don't know, but I will call you back and let you know, right? Which is a good thing, as you do this. Now, after that, I'll ask my other questions, and then I get to those hard questions, which are like, the house is 16 years old, and it doesn't say anything about the roof or the HVAC system or the appliances. Do you know if any of those have been replaced? Right? And then on their heels again, like, yeah, I don't know, right? But it also puts me in a position that when I make an offer on the house, they understand that I'm going to consider that. They're thinking, oh yeah, what's the house really worth if all those things need to be replaced? You know what I'm saying? So I go through and I get that information and I write it all down in my notebook. And then the next step in the process, guess what that is? Any idea? I call back the buyer. Now notice how this is an SOP. Can any agent do this? I can bring on buyer agents. How many of you have gotten to the point where you want to work with the sellers and then you have buyer agents that come in? You've gone through that process. But it's hard if you can't get those agents to do it like you would do it, so use an SOP. So the next step in the process is I call the buyer back and I say, great, I made an appointment. The first ability for us to show you the house, I use the we and us in that, is tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., which is one of the choices that they made. Does that work for you? Right? And they're like, great, perfect. I'll send that to you via text and email, so you have that reminder. I'm going to show you in a second how we do that. And then, by the way, I found some really great insider information about this home. And then I start talking about a couple of those things. I found out this or I found out that, and I leave that with them without giving them the whole rundown, because I tell them that when I come, I will have that insider information for you. Now, we give everything that we do a name. Why is it important that your services have a name? Any idea?
Quality, value.
It defines it. It's different than everybody else. You can use insider information or you can call it something else. But I tell them I have some insider information about this property that I was able to get, for example, this, or this that goes along with it. I will have a complete workup of that insider information when I come and show you that property. Okay. Oh, by the way, I forgot the last most important question I asked the real estate agent before I hang up. Anybody remember what that last most important question is? I keep forgetting that. Huh? I don't ask them that question. I know a lot of times now with the NAR, it's like, how much commission are they willing to pay? I don't do that, but you could in that sense. I'm the kind of person now, especially the buyers, I'm like, we're going to submit the offer with 3%, period. It doesn't matter. I'll let them deal with that when that comes back.
You could always ask them, are you offering? Don't ask them how much, but are they offering?
Negotiable
I never
anyway,
asked.
so
Yeah, I never ask now. If I submit an offer, it just says 3%. If they want to negotiate that later, they're going to have to do that. But a lot of times when an offer comes on the table for a seller, they're more anxious about what? Getting that house sold and the price itself. Now, they'll see the commission in there, but if they send a counter offer, it scares a lot of sellers, right? If I send a counter offer, it might not go under contract. So I rarely get them to come back and say, no, we're only paying this much. Sometimes it does, but anyway, that's a good thing to bring up. My last most important question that I ask them is, what can you tell me, this is to the seller agent, right, the listing agent, that will help my clients make the best offer on your home? Doesn't that sound crazy? I ask them that. What can you tell me to help my clients make the best offer on your home? Now, that leaves it open to whatever they're willing to share. And it's crazy what they share. I've had agents tell me exactly what I should offer. Maybe they should or shouldn't do that. I'm not going to get into that, the ethics side of it, but I had them do that. Because what's in their best interest? What are they trying to accomplish? They want to sell the house. And what have I shown them? I do my homework. I've got really good buyers because I started with that. They're really anxious about this home. They like it for all these reasons, right? And I even sometimes, a lot of times, you did a great job staging that house. Or the drone footage you used. I really compliment that agent. I pour it on without being over, I don't exaggerate, but I let them know, I really appreciate you as the listing agent. You did a great job. I'm just trying to get some clarification of some information so I can give that to my clients. When I ask those specific questions, it tells them what? I did my homework. I'm really good at figuring these things out and helping my clients. I'm not here just to open up a door. I'm here to help my clients get the best deal on a home, but I want to make sure that we take care of what your clients need. So I ask them that question. How can you help me help my clients make the best offer on your home? And then they start telling me things, which is really cool. Oh, we were under contract, it fell out of contract, they've already moved out, they're really anxious to buy, so you can make an aggressive offer. Is that good information to have? Or the fence in the backyard, they know it's falling down, so they're going to replace that. It's not on the MLS, but they're going to replace it. There's things that I get out of that almost every time. Every now and then an agent's like, yeah, it's all on the MLS. They'll say things that are just, it's all there. But I do have, most other agents will give me some insight to what would help me help my clients make a better offer, okay? So I write all these things down, and then when I call back that a buyer and share that with them and let them know that that's going to happen, then they get excited. And then I tell them one other thing. Okay, if it's all right with you, I want to show you a couple of more properties so that you can compare them. This is how I put it to them. Because if they asked to see this one house, they didn't ask you to show them 2 other homes, did they? And so if I try to put it, put out there that I want to show them a couple of more properties, which you want to do. Never show someone just one house, ever. You want to show them at least 3 homes if you can. We got that from HGTV. They always show 3 homes. You ever notice that? And they compare them. We want to do that too. It's called distinctive homes. We want them to be able to make a comparison, because if they can make a comparison right now, right there in the area that they want to buy, what does that usually help facilitate? A faster decision, right? If they don't have a comparison, what are they going to think? What if? What if there's someone else out there offering a better deal? What if there's another property that I'm going to like better? If I give them 3 properties, then what are they doing now? They're making a decision between 3 properties. It actually works, believe it or not. So what I tell them is okay, I'm going to have another couple of properties set up for you to see so you can compare that property and know that if it's the right price or the perfect, property for you. Okay, so, and I'll send that to you in an invitation that'll have a route of what we're going to go look at. And you can click on those properties to see them if you haven't already seen them. Okay, I've never, ever, up to this point, has had someone say, no, I don't want to look at any other properties. I haven't. But it could happen, if that's what their intention is, but usually that sounds good to them. You're doing a job beyond opening up one door. Okay, does that make sense? That's an SOP. That's the standard operating procedure of what we do. Okay, then I hang up the phone with them, right? I've made the appointment. What do I do next? When I get back to the office, I find a couple of more homes that I can show them. Now, this is what distinctive homes mean. I want to show them at least 1, if not 2 properties that are very similar to the property that they want to look at. Okay, why do I want to show them similar properties? Yeah, apple to apple. Thank you for saying it that way. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So they can, that's what they're interested in, right? Then I also show them a distinctive home. Now, what's a distinctive home? We give it a name for that. Guess what that is?
Well, that's a little better.
I find, because basically I'm hoping that I found what they really want in terms of, as I've talked to them, we really wanted a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome, so we don't have to take care of the yard, or whatever it is that they're looking at, or they want an investment or whatever. But a lot of times what they're getting isn't checking every box. How many times have you had a buyer that's not totally reasonable in terms of price and what they want, right? So we learned this from, it was one of the Property Brothers shows. It was called Sell It, List It, or Love It or List It. I can't. That was not property. One of them was where they would actually show them a property. This was many years ago, but they would take their buyers and show them their dream home. Yeah. Do you remember what that one was? I can't remember. And then they would reveal to them they would reveal to them how much that dream home actually costs. And they're like, oh, wait, there's no way we can afford that. But then they would convince them that they could help them buy a property and remodel it to get their dream home for a lot less money. Do you remember that one? So anyway, along with those lines, I like to show them a house that's maybe outside of their area a little bit, or a little bit outside of their price point. So now they also have something, because a lot of times if we show them the same home in the same area at the same price point, we're basically showing them, they're different properties, but they're all pretty much the same. Does that make sense? But if I show them, let's say they want to look in Vineyard, and there's all those new townhomes and condos out there. I take them across I-15 to Orem, and the properties are a little bit older, but maybe they get a bigger place, or they got more options, or this one has an ADU or something like that. I'll show them another property that's distinctive enough so they can really tell the difference between what it is that they're looking at, if that makes sense. Yes?
You try and stay in a certain percentage of that sales price?
I'm glad you said that. When I teach agents, I say 30% is usually what I'm looking at. So I don't want it to be more than 30% more in price, right? Or I don't want it to be more than a city away, right? So if they're looking at Vineyard, I might take them to Orem, and I might take them to Pleasant Grove. I'm not going to take them all the way up to Spanish Fork or something like that. That makes sense. But I want to get them somewhere close in that. So that way I have 3 or 4 properties that I can show them. So the next thing I do, I'm going to show you how I use our database. You need to have the software in place. there are many different softwares that do this. This is how ours does it. So I am going to put them into my database, and I'm going to add them here to, as a buyer. So basically we have a pipeline. So let's say that they are here, I'll put it here. They're a buyer, seller, homeowner. So whatever I designate them as, I have my system set up to give them information that's going to be helpful to them. I promise you that and you probably feel the same way, I do not like to receive information from vendors that's not completely relevant to what I need. Otherwise, it's junk. So every piece of information that we send out, and that's why we have our system set up this way, is very specific to their needs and wants. If I send them information about the market, it has to be their market. If I send information about their home values, it's their home value, not everybody's in general. Does that make sense? So I'm selecting things that are going to help my database know how to help them more specifically. And I can explain this a little bit more later, but I'll explain it to you in context with this buyer. So in this case, I'm going to have these engagements. I'm going to send them property alerts immediately. I'm not going to wait until after the first showing. I'm going to go ahead and set this up right now, just in case they might want to see other properties or they like something. So how many of you know how to do a listing alert or property alert? Yes.
Yeah, well, I was getting to that. So you can do the current properties, and you don't have to get permission to send them automatic emails. But if you're talking a listing alert, you do have to send the invitation out, and they have to respond to it on the MLS, right?
On the MLS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding, you're talking about them opting in to this.
Right. On
Yeah.
the MLS. This is not the MLS, or are you pulling from the MLS?
This is pulling from the MLS. So this is an IDX website, right? So it's a website that shows all of the listings in the MLS with your IDX key, but you are being shown as the agent they contact as the buyer agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I do is I come in here and I hit new alert. And then I can specify, you've probably seen something like this. I obviously feel our system's the best out there, but there's lots of systems that do this. But I can put in the location. So if I put in Vineyard, and then like I said, I don't want them just to look in Vineyard. I'm going to put a couple of close cities in there. I might put in Linden and Pleasant Grove and Orem along with that, right? Now let's say that the house that they're looking at is about 550,000, or a townhome, right? 550. I usually go up about that 30%, so I'll be around $600,000. I don't want to go way overboard, right? And then if they said we only want a single family home or whatever, I'll specify that. But if they didn't, I just say any on that. And then up here it tells me how many results there are. So it's already telling me immediately how many homes are available right now that are active, not under contract, right? That are active that they could look at. And 28 is a good number. It's not too many, it's not too few, stuff like that. The more you specify what they're looking for, and we've got pages and pages from the MLS listing that we can specify in terms of that property alert. Make sense? Okay. And so I put those in there. So I might put in Provo, and then if I do that, it's going to start raising that number. Now there's 174, right? So you can kind of get a gauge of what you want to send out to them. Once I decide what that is, I hit next, and then I can decide how often they get it. And I can have them send it to them immediately or not. This is automated. If you know what a listing alert's supposed to do, it's not something that you have to keep doing. You do it one time and it just keeps sending them that information, or we call it a property alert. And then you can specify when it goes out, how often it goes out, if it's daily, weekly, or things like that. If you join us with our in school, and we talk about this in more detail, you can get more information about it. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but you need to be able to send this. Yes.
One of the options on there is something comes on new. If it's new in that area, will it send immediately?
Immediately. Yep. You can say, so it says send alert immediately. That's already checked right there. So if something comes up, it will send that alert immediately on the next day or following days and stuff like that. Now,
The
go ahead.
MLS has one that as soon as it's on the MLS, it will send.
Yeah.
Does that do? Or
Yes,
are we
this-
waiting till the scheduled?
Well, if you put in a schedule that doesn't send them, no, actually it does, it can do both. You can do a schedule that's only Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something like that. But if something comes up within the criteria that comes up, you can also set it to send that one immediately. You can create multiple alerts in that sense. Okay, so once I've done that and I've set this up and I put the together, what's gonna happen is they're gonna get my invitation. Let me go back here. Obviously to see that property, but I'll show you how I do that too, because it's even cooler how that works. I love how that part of it works. But I can actually start seeing what they're looking at when they start clicking on it. It's kind of fun when this happens, because typically they'll start clicking on it right away. And before I even show them that one property and try to come up with the other two, they've already showed me by what they're looking at what they might be interested in, if that makes sense. So this is really good technology that you should have in play, because if you don't, guess where they're going to look at properties? Zillow and other places, not your site. They're going somewhere else. Yeah, they're coming. I want them to come to mine. And when they come to my site, and I've already put them in there, by the way, I see what they click on, the average price point, the location. I can click on the home that they're looking at, so I can get that insider information. If it says that they looked at like this home right here, so if I go to activities, you know, Marjorie viewed this property and viewed this property and viewed this property. I'm looking, here's all these properties. I can click on that property. I can see the property that they clicked on. I can look at all this information that's here. And then I can call up the listing agent if I want, get more information. So it makes it very easy. If things aren't easy, we don't do them. Have you ever noticed that? So I want things to be automated. I want them to be easy for me. And so this is what makes it easy for me and easy for them. So now I've got all this really great information about their interest in this particular area. And I can even set it up to that it notifies me. And then even my AI, because we're using AI now, says a seller and buyer lead recently viewed this, townhome on this address at this price. This shows strong interest in properties matching, et cetera. It's actually helping you identify through all the activity what it is that you should be doing. It even says, you want to contact Marjorie for buying needs? Sometimes it'll say, do you want to send this email? And it'll write it for you and stuff like that. Okay. So these are the kind of things that you want your system to do to kind of keep you in tune with what's going on and make things happen more quickly. So then the next thing is if she starts clicking on properties, like let's say she clicked on this property. I like this, so she saves it. Okay. Now she can also come here and decide if she wants to look at it in person or virtual. I love this. I've already made an appointment with them. They've already called me about a property. Now they're coming in here and they're clicking on other properties and they're saying, oh, I want to see this one too. They actually schedule a tour and put that information in there. It lets my system know about that. Now, once it lets my system know about what properties that they want, I can come over here and I can create a property tour with the properties that I select or that they select. Watch what this does. It uses the same technology that like UPS uses. It actually creates your route and the timing to do that. So now it's saying, here's the 3 properties that you're gonna show, whether you put them in or they clicked them as favorites. And then what I can do is say, okay, right now it's having me show this house down here first, and then I go back up to show these 2 homes. That's not the best order, so I can move the order around. And I can start putting it in the order that's gonna make the most sense in the route. And then it even sets up how far away it is from each other, right? And then when I set up the appointments and aligned, it'll even tell me how long it's going to take me to get from one property to the other. It basically puts the whole thing together in a route. Now watch this. Once I refresh this, I can save the tour once the tour is done, and then it sends it to her, right? Or to this buyer. And this is what they see. And it comes both in email and text. This is what they get. Here's the house we're looking at. So we're going to meet, and you change the time, of course, because it wouldn't be at 8 a.m. But, we're going to look at this one at 8, this one at 8:32, and this one at 9:04. It actually does your schedule, and you can say how much time you're going to spend at each property. And then when they get the schedule, not only do they get to see the houses they're looking at, they can click on it on your website while they're on their phone, and they can not only get directions, right? You get the directions through their GPS, but they can also look at all the pictures and get ready for that showing. Isn't that cool how that's all set up? That's the kind of thing that you want to be able to do, so that when you show up at a property and then you've got 3 or 4 others that you're showing them, they're prepped and ready. They know what they're going to be looking at. They've spent some time with it. You've got insider information. You are so much further beyond what a typical agent is doing right now. And they're coming back to your site every time they're getting engaged. They want to use your site and your app now because you're giving them more than just them looking up a property and then them trying to let you know, okay, it's this property here. Those that look up Zillow, by the way, if they're driving around a neighborhood, which they do, they literally see a house for sale, they see a yard, they go on their phone, they look up that address on Zillow, but they don't know the street name, so they back all the way up. You ever done this before? They look at the sign, then they go forward. Okay, what's the address again? Type it in. Then they're looking at pictures, and then they read the description. And then if they want to go look at the house, Zillow tells them to contact the agent. And sometimes they do that. and it's not you. So you don't want it to work out that way. So there's even an app that goes with this. It shows the GPS of their car, all the properties around them, and then they click on the property, they favorite it. It's basically part of your system. Does that make sense? That's the kind of tech you need today if you want to be an agent of value of service when it comes to the buying side. Okay? Any questions about any of that?
Homes you're going to see, it puts them into where you're going to start and says, okay, this one, you know, makes sense to go here, this makes sense to go there. Yeah. And then it gives you the time so that your buyers see this and they say, oh, like, we have to leave, we need to go to our next one. It's because, you know, sometimes you go and you're like, I know you like this house, but our next appointment is coming.
Yeah.
They can see this, and usually they're the ones saying that to me.
Yeah, it works really good. And then the nice thing too is they can write comments and submit this. This all goes back to the system and it manages information about, you know, the tour itself or the properties they're looking at. So it all happens on their phone and their app. Yes.
So are you printing these out also so they have print and the digital, or are you just digital?
In this tour, it's all digital. It's actually better digital because then they can click on it. If I change anything, it updates it. Like let's say, you know, we're going to add another property in there and change some times around. Does that happen very often when you're doing tours and, you know, change? So digital is better in that sense. What I do print out is what I'm going to explain next.
Okay.
Okay? So any questions? Yes.
Just a note on that. I have two daughters. They're both in their 30s and they're very tech savvy on phones. We were trying to go somewhere and I'm like, just follow me. And they're like, no, Dad.
Yeah, you give me the address. I don't trust you, Dad.
We're not following.
Exactly, yeah. Plus you drive bad, Dad.
They have no interest in doing things the way I used to do things.
Yeah.
I was kind of taken aback. I was like, what's the big deal? I was like,
Yeah.
It's their world. It's not mine anymore.
And one thing I do want to impress on all of you old people like me, I say that as me as old too, is that our idea of technology is probably 20 years ago. Remember what it was like to do anything with any technology, even 5 years ago sometimes. It was a pain in the butt. It was super hard. Today's technology is really simple. It's so much more simple than it was before. I mean, how many of you would have dreamed of Canva 5 years ago even, or whatever? You can drag and drop and put together flyers in an instant like that. But our heads still tell us it's hard. So as soon as we see new tech, we're like, running away and fearful of it. When if you just take a minute, that's why our kids, I swear my kids when they were really young even were showing me how to use my phone and I didn't even, how did you do that? You know, but it's really that simple, but a lot of times we get in our own way. We believe that it's hard when it's really not that difficult. You saw how easy it was for me to put that together. Could you imagine what it would have been like to do that manually, right?
And then my daughters would, they'd be like, exactly, Dad, that's how you should have done that.
Exactly, yeah.
Send us the link.
Yeah, and that's what our clients expect. Do our clients not expect today's technology and everything that you do? If you're not using today's technology, you're what? Old school, archaic, you're behind the times. I need what is offered now. That's why they go to Zillow. That's why they go to these other platforms. If they're calling you, but they're using all these other platforms that aren't yours, you're the door opener. But if you're now integrating them into a system and a process that's fully integrated in a way that they're like, I can ask for information and AI can answer questions when you're not available, and it gives me a route of where to go once you set that up and it's right there. You send me a CMA, like right now, I bet most of you are sending out printed CMAs. Or giving out printed CMAs. That's old school. Most of you are probably giving two-dimensional images for your listings. When it's a good first step in the funnel, but if you're not using 3D technology, it's crazy how we're taking 3D objects and giving them 2D showcases, right? So if you can't use today's technology, you are so far behind that if people are still using you, it's because they love you. Probably number one. And number two, it's because they need someone to get them through a transaction and they trust you for that. But if you want to start generating those 2 to 3 deals every single month, you got to come up to speed with what's going on right now with what they're used to, or they're just going to think of you as, yeah, that's the nice person that gave me a pumpkin at the pumpkin patch and calls me up on my birthday and makes me feel good. You know, I do like that. That's important. But if you can make that the status quo, which it really should be, right? And then on top of that, you're giving them the tech and the insights and the the value that goes beyond that, then they're never going to use someone else, and they tell other people about it. I get most of my business from referrals, not because I'm a nice guy, but because I help people sell their homes faster and for more money. The last 6 homes that I've sold, which is in the last 2 months, right? The last 6 homes that I've sold all went under contract. Every single, oh no, there was one that we had in Park City that took a little while because they overpriced it. All the rest were under contract before the week ended, before the first week ended. We basically postponed or didn't even do open houses on 2 of the properties. We were under contract and they were happy and they're like, yeah, we don't want to do an open house now. That sells you and sells your properties more so than just the hustle. I promise you. Sell properties faster for more money. This sells you as a buyer agent more than anything else when you've got the tech in place. So now I show up to the house. When should you show up to the house? The first home that you're going to show them? Before they do. The first house at least. Why do you show up before they do?
So you can get in and get prepped.
Yes, you can get in. Would you please all, I'm going to tell you this right now, stop hiding the damn Supra in some weird, awful place. Okay? Or it doesn't open the front door because I didn't read the instructions that says you have to walk around the back and open up the back man door and then use a code to get in the garage to get in the house, or whatever it is that you're doing. Just make sure that it's just obvious or something. I get it. The owner doesn't want to have their super key in the front door, whatever. It's secure anyway. Sorry to get on that rant. But anyway, get there early so that you can get in the house, turn on the lights. That's the first home should be, even if you're going to change the order, you should always gear your route based on what? What should be the first home that you show them?
When they're closest to one.
The one they want to see. That's the first home you should always show them, even if it's harder to schedule everything else. Because if you show them another home first of all, you're that's the reason they called you. That's the reason that they got, that you got that buyer opportunity. So you want to show that property first, and then they'll gauge the other homes against that, and that's fine. That makes sense to them. If they choose one of their other homes, great, but they called you for that home, so show them that first. Get in there, turn on the lights, get ready for them to come over, all that kind of stuff. Now, we get into the NAR ruling. So now I have to shift gears because I can't show them that house until what? Yeah, so if I show up at the house, even if I'm there early and the door's ready and the lights are on, and I can't walk them in that door until I have a signed agreement legally. You know what a lot of agents are doing right now? They're showing the first house without a signed agreement sometimes and then talking to them. I was even contemplating that myself. This is being recorded, so please, I don't do that. But that's where it got a little bit difficult. It's like, what the heck do I do now? Because if I'm on the phone with him, like, I'm so excited to show you this house. I got this insider information. I've got this route I'm going to send you, and everything looks awesome. Oh, by the way, I have to get you to sign a contract before I can walk you into this house. If I've got my clipboard at the house, which some agents are doing now, how many of you have done this? I'm literally at the house, whether I send it to them electronically or I've got it printed out. By the way, printout's better. And I'll explain that why. But I've got it at the house, I'm like, okay, just so that you know, just legal stuff. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. You need to sign this contract that says that you can only work with me for the next 12 months and I get 3%. And if they don't pay it, then you pay it. So sign it really quick and then we'll go look at the house. And now it's winter time, so sign it really quick because it's cold outside. And what do you do?
It's better to have this conversation before you got to the door.
Oh, okay. But how do you have that conversation before you? I haven't even met the guy. I got him on the phone. Or gal or whatever. What do you do? Okay, set up a buyer consultation. And they love that, don't they? Okay, before I can show you the house that you wanted to see, and that's really the only reason you called me, we need to have a sit down. And we need to explain to you why I'm the only one that can show you a house for the next 12 months for 3%. And it's all about you, by the way. It's not about me. Doesn't it sound that way to you? No, it doesn't at all. So what do? The room's very quiet. Yeah, yes.
I just make it for that. If it's 3 properties, they just get for those 3 properties for that day, and I explain why.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, okay. They're cool with that because you haven't built the trust yet. So do you want to chase them off? They don't know that they want to sign something for 6 months with you. So you say, look, the state requires there to be some kind of agency group to show you this house. So I'm gonna do something a little different than most other agents do, is I'm gonna make it just for this property. Because you know what? I don't know if I wanna keep working with you. You may not wanna keep working with me, but this satisfies me.
Okay. I'm not.
And now suddenly, you've kind of taken that unknown away from them, and you're not like dumping yourself on them, but at the same time, it's going to be different than what they've either already gotten and refused to do, or they'll find out.
Okay. I'm going to say something to disagree with that a bit, but I'm going to wait. Yes, back there.
I actually have a buyer presentation class that I do with every single buyer, and I make them come to my office, and I go through the entire process, and I educate them, and I meet them, and like I sit down with them, I provide them drinks, some snacks, whatever. And every single person that I've done that with has actually signed that contract for a year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that works really good with people that already know you and have a sense. Nope, strangers even. I love that. If you can do that.
I got one this week that she saw a comment that I made on Facebook, and she called me off of somebody else's post from Facebook, and she was like, hey, I'm looking to buy a house. I think I like you. Can you help me with that? I met with her and her husband, and we have a signed contract.
That's great. I love that. So I guess what I want to suggest is that a consultation is in their best interest. They just don't know it. And I think it's in yours too. And not that I'm disagreeing with you, Dan, because I totally get to what you're saying, is my time is valuable. And the thing is, if I show up and say, I'll show you these 3 homes, if you don't want to buy one of these 3 homes, then there's no other obligation. I think that really keys into what their interest is, right? But it also suggests that, look, I'm willing to spend quite a bit of my time and effort and possibly get nothing out of it so that you can see these homes, but then you can call anybody you want later, right? You can be, basically that's a convenience offering. And I'm trying to separate myself from a convenience offering to a level of service offering, but I get it. But I would almost say, I'd say, okay, I'm going to show you. I've had agents tell me that they do stuff like what you're talking about, one-day contracts or home contracts, but they charge them for them to come see it. I charge $150. I have one agent that does that. I will show you just these 3 homes or this one home, it's $150. Or you can sign my contract. And he says, I get a lot of people that sign my contract because I let them know that. But what I liked about that, even though there's some things I don't like about it, is that it tells that person, I'm not your lackey. I'm not the person that's just going to come jump in my car and do all this research and show you these homes and then hope that you call me back. But I do like the way you positioned it in the sense that I don't know if I even want to work with you. But the idea for me is like, I'm not going to take all this time and effort hoping that you buy one of these 3 homes. I'm a professional that goes beyond that. But anyway, does that make sense? I mean, that's how I feel. Yes.
They ask for that fee prior to seeing the first home?
Yeah. Yeah. They say, yeah, I can show you these homes, but you know, because of the law that's involved, I have to have you under contract. And you can sign a contract where I continue to show you homes until you buy, because I don't get paid until after you buy a property. And you have to clarify that. I do not get paid until you buy, right? So if they were to get a lawyer that does that for them, how many of you know about those services? And they charge 30% usually for something like that. You have to sign a contract with them. You know what I mean? So, and that contract is not going to end just for one day of work. So again, if you're trying to position yourself as a professional that offers a high value service that gets a high payout, but you're willing to do it for free, you know, or at least a portion of that for free, in my sense, it's starting to tell our clients, hey, I just do this for free until you buy a property and I'll show you 3 homes without any compensation. And I don't know if that's the right message for me, at least. That's
fair.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what I do. I like the buyer consultation, so we put together a buyer consultation. And this is how I present it to them. When I call back that client and tell them, that buyer, and tell them that we have house set up, I do send this all out to them, right? But I call them back and say, I want you to know that, as you probably heard, me showing you properties is what I do for a living, right? So I explain that. But I don't get paid until after you buy a home. I want to put that right out on the table so that they know that. I don't get paid until you buy a home. And I'm going to, I lost track for a second. So when I talk to them, I let them know I don't get paid until, you know, that house is, that you buy that property. So we have a contract, just like a lawyer would do. And I even say that, just like a lawyer would have, where after that happens, I'll get paid. So we need to be under contract before I can show you the home. And by the way, that's what's required now to look at properties. Okay. Unfortunately, that is driving a lot of buyers to go directly to the seller agent, by the way. So that's an unfortunate thing. But I try to position it in a way, and this is how I say it, before we go and look at that first property, I just want to show you a few things. Oh, sorry. I got a little confused. I don't even go through that until later in the presentation. When I call them back and say I've got the appointment for the property, I actually tell them that before we go and look at the properties, I have some insider information. Remember I said that about the property. I'd like to share that with you via Zoom before we go and look at that property. Basically, I'm setting up what? A consultation. It doesn't have to be in person. I do it over Zoom. And I tell them that I've also found a few other properties, as you saw in the invitation that I sent you, to go look at. And I want to give you some inside information about those properties to prepare for us to go and look at those homes. Okay? Does that make sense? And so that's how I present it to them. I've never had anybody say, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to go look at the house. They actually say, oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, I want to give you some good information on these properties as we prepare for it. It's a planning session, basically. Okay. So then I give them a link to Zoom, and we have a presentation that you can use, and this is what it looks like. So let me present this. For all of you, there is a video step-by-step guide. It's also in your book of what to say during this presentation, just like your listing presentation. So this is what I do when I pull this up over Zoom, is I first show them the homes we're going to look at. That's the first thing I do. Here's your house that you want to look at. Here's this other house. Here's this third house. We can compare it to. Did you get the links to it? And then I hold up the piece of paper that shows my inside information. So on the front of the paper is the MLS sheet, and I have it highlighted. And I show that to them on the Zoom meeting. Why do I show that to them? Any idea? Shows all the work I did, right? Here's the homework that I did. Here's a bunch of information about this property that I was able to get. We call this inside information. Us realtors have access to it, and I even take it a bit further. I call the listing agent and I find out, or the seller, you can say that, to get some more details about the property, because I know what most of my clients initially look at are pictures and the description. So by working with me, I'm going to give you a lot more information to help you make a more informed decision and get the best deal on this property. Does that resonate with them, you think? It does. So I show them that sheet. So see all these things that are highlighted? This is really important details about the property. It indicates how much the HOA is going to cost, what the restrictions are in the HOA, how much your taxes are going to be on this property. And I start saying those things, and guess what they're thinking? Wow, I didn't even think about that yet. I just wanted to go look at the house, but this is really good information. Then I turn it over, and by the way, at the top of my paper, I write in big bold letters, insider information. I write it there. So it shows that that is a distinctive offering that they have. And guess what I'm writing on the back of that paper? All the answers to the questions when I ask the agent about those things, you know, that what does the HOA include? You know, does this happen? And I get so much great information. Like, they're willing to, even though it showed the fridge and the washer and dryer as exclusions, they're actually willing, you know, to give those to the buyer. How often does that happen? But it says, it shows as exclusions on the listing. But when I talk to the agent, they're saying that they're willing to do that, or they're willing to fix the fence. Or I found out that the HVAC system is 16 years old and they haven't replaced it. So we want to make sure, if you're going to put an offer on this house, that we get that inspected and make sure that everything's working all right. Now, what am I showing this person? The value that goes beyond that. And so I show them. I don't show it for all 3 homes, and I haven't even done maybe that research on the other 2 or 3 homes. I just say, and we're going to look at these other homes, and I'll have inside information for them as well. What I'm doing is I'm teasing them. It's a carrot that I'm putting out there, like, you want this, and I'm going to show it to you once we go and look at that property. Okay. Now, before we actually go and look at the property, I want to show you what I do to help you get the best deal on that property. Right? The very best deal you can on that property, and make sure that everything goes really smoothly. So I'm going to explain to you what my services are. Now, I don't mean to, and I tell this to them, I don't mean to overcomplicate this, but as you probably understand, you're hiring a professional that helps I help my clients get exactly what they're looking for and get all the information that's important. So let me explain what I do. There's basically 5 things that I do to help that to happen. I'm going to explain to you how important it is to get the best loan out there. Are you paying with cash? Or are you paying, and this is what I ask them right there, are you paying with cash or are you using a lender? Okay, now remember that question that you're asking, are you qualified? And I'm getting the answer to that when? Before I go show it to them right now. So I'm still qualifying them, but I'm making it, I'm showing it to them as far as the service that I offer. So I say, okay, we're going to talk about mortgage lending to get you the best actual price on that property in terms of your payment. What I do to help you shop for a home, we even use 3D technology, so we'll talk about that. The purchase offer, when you make an offer on a house, and what I do to help you get that, that perfect offer. What happens under contract, and then closing and move-in. And so then I walk through it. Now, if they say that, hey, I'm good, I think this is great, you don't need to show me all these things. I've had a couple times because I know the people, they're like, yeah, just send me the contract and I'll sign it. Because they know that's what I'm leading towards. But most of them, they like to hear this. How many of you, and I've got 20 minutes to go through this, so I want to be quick about it, but also really help you understand how important this is. How many of you help your clients get the best mortgage? Or you just pass it on to your mortgage lenders or give them 3 cards? Anybody help your clients? What can you do, I guess is what I'm asking. As an agent, what can you do when it comes to mortgage lending? You shop what? Lenders. Do you do that with them, or do you just give them a few lenders to go for?
Well,
to go with?
shopped them, I guess, and then I give them their information.
Okay. Anything else that any of you do? Because when it comes to mortgage lending, does that impact the buying decision? And also, if they haven't talked to anybody, when they talk to a lender, what are they getting from a lender? If I go and talk to a lender, what am I going to get from a lender? An application and a quote. Okay? Is that lender going to say, there's someone over here that will give you a better deal?
No.
Do they do that? So they're going to tell me what they have to offer. Now, do people feel like lenders offer different rates and options? Do they? They actually do. They can. So I have 2 preferred lenders. I hate to say that because they might be watching me and they hate it. But I do. I have a broker. What's the difference between a broker and a direct lender? Anybody know?
A broker shops with you.
A broker shops around, and a direct lender does everything in-house. Yeah, they do it in-house. Do they both have pros and cons to them? They do. Do you know what those are? If you don't, you need to find out. Ask ChatGPT. It can help you, or attend our course, or our stuff that we teach about, because it's really important. I used to be a mortgage lender myself that was licensed as a mortgage lender, because I worked with those companies to help them with their sales and marketing efforts. So it is important to know what those are. So this is what I tell them. I say, I work with a range of lenders to help you compare mortgage options and find the best rate and terms. I'll help you strengthen your offer with a loan pre-approval. So the one objective of this is to make sure that they're making an offer with a pre-approval, and that's what I explained first. I say there's a difference between what's called a pre-approval and a pre-qualification. A pre-qualification means that they just took some basic information, maybe pulled credit, and then said that you're pre-qualified. But that doesn't mean you're actually ready to buy that property. Pre-approval means that they've done all the verification processes, or all the verification that's needed to understand if you really can buy it for that price. I help my clients get a pre-approval. That's what I tell them. I help my clients get a pre-approval to strengthen their offer and get their offer accepted. So what do they want to do now? They want to get pre-approved. So I put that out there right away. Then they tell me, I've already got a lender. We've already done this. What have you got? Oh, I got a pre-qualification. Can you send it to you? Can you show it to me? I even have them show it to me if they can. And then I kind of explain the difference between the two. 99.9% of them do not have a pre-approval. They have a pre-qual, if they even have that. Sometimes it's even a verbal pre-qual, not even something that's printed. We need to have that to give to them, or your offer's not going to be strong enough. And then I tell them, when you get an offer from a lender, you're going to get what's called a loan estimate. Everyone know what a loan estimate is? You do? How many of you know how to read it? Good. It's not that hard. You know what you can do? I've done this. I'll take 2 loan estimates, put it up in ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to compare the 2 loan estimates and give me information about the difference between the 2. It is crazy how good it is. Now, I let the client know I'm not a mortgage lender, because right now I'm not licensed as one. I'm only going to help you understand what the 2 mean. You need to talk to your lender for that, because that's outside of my realm of responsibility. But I want to help you make sure that you understand what you're getting. Are you allowed to do that? Yes, you can do that. So I ask it to, for example, the last client that I had, they're an investor. They went to my broker and they also went to a direct lender that was a friend of theirs, right? I didn't know, this person. And they got 2 loan estimates. And I looked at it, because I can do that, but you can have ChatGPT do it. But one of them had a 1%, their friend had a 1% origination fee. Everyone know what that is? They're charging them like $6,000 something dollars, it's 1% for them to do the loan. The other one had 0. Is there a difference between that in terms of fees? Huge. It's 6,000, yeah, 6,600. 1% is a lot. Is that a lot of money? Right? Now, the one that did their friend, that charged 1%, gave them a 1/4 point better interest rate than the other. Most of your clients are going to look at what when it comes to loans? They look at one thing, the interest rate. So they're thinking, oh, my friend is giving me a better interest rate. But when I looked between the two, they were paying for that interest rate $6,600. So when I talked to the broker that was looking at their loan, when he used basically there's a point buy down. And this is kind of, I don't like this, but it does happen. To me, if you're going to buy down points, it should be in the loan estimate, because there's a section for that, for buying down points. They use the origination fee to about 4,000 of that to buy down to, 2,000 of that to buy down the rate to what that better rate was. So actually this other loan, their friend's loan, was costing them $4,600 and something dollars more than the broker that I had sent them. Now, a broker is really good if the person has really good credit. It's a very good, easy loan, because they're not going to underwrite that, someone else is. So the more difficult ones, I love the direct lenders to do. But the easy ones, I love the broker to do, because usually they can get a better deal. Anyway, that's the way it worked out. So this is what I recommend, is you tell them, and this is what I tell them, when it comes to interest rate, that's what most people look at. Interest rate is dependent on down payment, monthly payment, closing costs, loan type, right? And the things that you might hear about, rate buy downs, rate locks, mortgage insurance, seller concessions, pre-approval versus pre-qualification, all those things are important to consider in order to get the best rate and term on your loan that you have, because you're going to be paying that for over several years. Now, if I position myself as a real estate agent that's an advocate for them to get the best rate and term on a loan, because none of the lenders that they work with are going to tell them the things that are going to tell them that maybe you can get something better somewhere else, but I can do that when I help them compare. And does the government want them to shop around? They do. That's the whole reason the 2008 law came about. They get told things like, oh yeah, if you go with another lender, it's going to ding your credit. Does that actually happen?
No.
It does not. They've got 6 months to shop around without it affecting their credit. Do you all know that, right? Do you know how to compare a loan estimate? Please learn how to do that. And then I tell my clients, that's what I'm going to help them to do. I'm already putting myself above. Why would they want to work with any other loan officer? Any other real estate agent, because I'm offering this to them. Any questions about this? No? How many of you feel uncomfortable talking about this? Anybody? No? You all feel like you can do that? ChatGPT can help. The other thing I recommend is hopefully you all have a lender that you work closely with and they're paying half of your fees to leads or something like that. Make sure you get a lender that is willing and open and transparent enough to help you compare the different options that they're getting. I've got a lender that does that. I can send him what a competitor is saying is, hey, can you explain the two? He's honest enough to tell me, actually, that's a better deal than I can give. I can't match that, or I can't beat that. And so if I can pass that on to my client, what have I done now for my client? I've given them some insight that they're not able to get anywhere else. Is Zillow going to give them that insight? Is the lender going to give them that insight? Nobody is. Who's the only advocate that they really have to help them understand how to compare loans? Yeah. It's either Google or you. So let it be you, okay? Or ChatGPT, I guess. Okay, next, home shopping. Then I tell them, now, as you go through the process of home shopping, I really excel here. I love to help my clients shop for a home. Now, what does that mean when it comes to that? You're not alone to find the right home. I really want them to know you're not alone. Most of them feel like they're alone. They're shopping where? On Zillow, online, to find out the house. They're calling you to do what? To show it, right? So now I say this, I provide the tools and information that makes your home shopping experience more efficient and informative. So that's when I go in and I talk about, I'm going to be your personal home shopper. I will be your personal shopper. How many people like the idea of having a personal shopper? So I say it in that context. I'm going to be your personal shopper. right? You can go to a clothing store and pick out your clothes and hope they look good, but wouldn't it be nice to have someone there to say, yes, that goes well. Let's show you the top that goes with it, the shoes, you know, that kind of thing. That's what you want to present yourself as. I'm a personal home shopper, right? I'll send instant notifications of new properties via text and email. I'll get you insider information and showing reports, which I'll talk to you about in just a second. So I create a specialized report of insider information on each property, like the one I showed you here. You're going to get that for all the properties that you seriously want to consider. Are they getting that from Zillow? Are they getting that from anywhere else? No, but they're getting it from you. So why would they want to work with anybody else? I also provide a showing report on properties we tour, which I'll talk about in a second. And then cutting edge technology. I can provide virtual showings with a 360 camera if you cannot see the property in person. I provide a GPS home buyer app to see the prices, pictures, and details as you drive around a neighborhood. Do you think your clients, after you show them a few homes, stay around while you leave? And they're driving around and looking at properties. You have the GPS homebuyer app with them. They're not looking on Zillow anymore, and it makes it more convenient for them. They can actually see the house for sale right here. They can click on it, see pictures, they can favorite it, and it all goes to your database if you have it set up right. And then you can set up a home report from what they already showed you. You don't have to go in there and replug it in and remember all the extra time. If you have to do a whole bunch of extra steps, what ends up happening? You just don't do it, right? And so that's what we want to help you to overcome. And then I show them this picture. So you're going to get a showing report. So let me explain what a showing report is. How many times have you gone through a property with a client and then another property and then another property, and then by the time you've shown them 4 or 5 properties, they're trying to remember what this house had compared to this house, compared to this one. Do I like this one? Wait, what happened here? And then a lot of times when you go into a house, this is the worst mistake you can make, is to let them walk through it while you wait for them. Anybody ever do that? You always walk with them. But then there's this awkwardness. They're like huddled together, whispering and talking about what they like or don't like about the property. And then you're following them around. Sometimes I've had agents say, well, I have to follow you around because of, compliance and, that's a legal thing. It seems creepy, So what do I tell my clients? I have a notepad and I have a phone. And what I tell them is, as they come into the house, I want you to walk the property and tell me what you like and don't like about the house. I will write notes and take pictures, and then I'm going to send you a report after this for any house that you really liked, so you remember exactly what it was. And we call that a showing report. How many agents do a showing report? Yes?
My question is, do you want them to tell you what they like and don't like while they're in the home? Because everybody has cameras all over.
Yeah, but isn't that what they're doing anyway? So what am I trying to get them to do? Share it with me.
I always tell them, let's go outside and talk about it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. In case there's cameras and stuff like that. I tell you, like right now, it's so weird about that. I usually at the front door, the only time they're usually going to have a listening device is at the front door, honestly. It's true. I know it's true. But here's the thing.
Oh, no.
But here's the...
I can't tell you how many sellers have said, oh, yeah, we watched them.
Yeah.
We listened to them
That's so
on
creepy.
Alexa,
Yeah.
this or that,
Yeah,
every time.
I have to go through this really quick, so I don't want to go into it too much. Sorry, but I do. In my mind, I'm like, fine. If they're going to be creepers, then they're going to be creepers. I'm not going to have to tell secrets or stuff like that. What I'm trying to do is position myself as the agent that helps them remember what they liked or didn't like, and I want them to share with me. I don't want them to be secretive about it. So I'm fine with that. Now, if they get really negative or something like that, then I might mention that, hey, there might be cameras or something in there.
That's what we put in the dialogue. Because we do that, but we don't take it as far as you do, which is really good.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, when we send this out and give this to them, and there's 3 different homes that we send it to, our goal is to do what? I actually have as part of my indicators of the success of our agents and what I'm trying to do, if I only go out one time with a client and they look at 3 or 4 homes and they make a decision on those 3 or 4 homes, is that not a better use of their time and my time? How many of you literally shown 50 homes over 5 weeks to clients? And they literally cannot make up their mind. Most of the time they can't because they see too many, right? Too many choices, but they don't have concrete, all they're thinking about is what they like. Did I like the red accent wall or not? Or, these little things like that. Now what I'm doing, like I just showed that they're going to make I could tell just because they sent me 30 homes they wanted to look at. Literally sent me 30 homes. My goal was to narrow it down to the 4 by talking to them about what their objective is. And then I did the research in terms of what they could rent it for, how far it was, what they were trying to do. I narrowed it down to 4 homes. The husband was out of town when we were doing it, right? So it was only with the wife. I provided the showing report after we're done, and they were still I could tell. They were thinking, well, we've got 30 other homes to look at. But I sent them the 4 homes that they looked at, and I, in the showing report, indicated from what the wife had seen, what they liked, and the daughter was there too. She's the one that was going to live there and go to school there. She really liked this house. There's this house that I was like, this is a great house. They're under contract after just looking at those 4 homes, and they close at the end of this month, right? You can help people make faster, better decisions, and isn't that your job? It really should be. When you let people run, your clients run the entire show, it can be a complete disaster. And a lot of times it is. When you take charge and help them make better decisions, not to push them into something that they don't want, but give them enough information that they can make an informed decision, and you're there to help them understand that, because for them it's very emotional and it's very objective. Right? Or subjective, I should say. You kind of put it into an objective mode that makes them able to make decisions more quickly. Does that make sense? So that's what we do here. Then, and by the way, if you don't have this, if you don't know how to do virtual tours, that's a huge thing. If you don't have the technology to send them the links and the GPS piece of it, please talk to us. We can help you to do that. If you don't have today's technology, you are a door opener. Basically working with friends and family that respect you. If you have the technology, you are a professional that helps people make better informed decisions, get through a process. You've got names for your services, and now they're recommending you to others, not because you're a nice person, but because you've got the tools and the resources and the expertise that they are looking for, that they didn't even know you could offer. Most of our clients, when I show them this kind of stuff, they're like, they didn't even know this stuff existed with an agent. Right? I've had it, the agent that we helped with, she said, I didn't even know that agents did this, right? Or how much more do I have to pay you for these extra services because they didn't expect them? You want to be in that position if you want 2 to 3 deals every single month, okay? Then we say, we're going to craft an offer. Now I'm explaining to them, once you put an offer in, after you find the right property, I'm going to help you get the best deal on that property based on our procedure. So I say, here's our offer strategy, the things that we do. We look at market conditions, competition, time on the market, your loan program, seller's equity position, seller concessions, closing contributions, and the home warranty options that are going to go with every offer. What do they think an offer is before you tell them this? It's a price, what I'm willing to pay for it. No, these are all the things that we're going to consider that goes into your offer. And then we're going to leverage based on evidence. Because did you know that offers are leveraged and pricing is leveraged based on evidence, not emotion? They're dealing primarily in the emotion state of things, right? Does that make sense? So I'm going to show it to them in terms of evidence. You've got your insider information. If that HVAC system is 20 years old, and it's not in great condition, we're not going to pay full price, full market value for that house. We're going to pay less for that. But when I present an offer to an agent, I let them know about all these things because I want them to think, yeah, you're right. And they tell their client this too. A lot of times they don't even think about it. They literally think their house is worth the very top dollar in their market for their house that's 30 years old, and none of these things have been replaced. And they're going out to buy a new house because they don't want to replace all those things. So when I make, like for example, the house that we just put an offer on, it wasn't that much older of a house. It was listed for sale for $668,000. It was actually worth, I think it would appraise for $668,000. Right now is a good buyer's market. Guess what they got the house under contract for? This is the same family I'm telling you about that we just talked about with the mother was looking. $640,000 plus $10,000 in concessions. They literally got the house for $630,000 that's worth $668,000. And it is pretty much worth $668,000. When you do that for your clients, what do they think? Yeah, you just saved them $38,000 is what they're thinking, right? But I couldn't have done that just by saying, I'm going to lowball it. How many of you heard that before? Don't lowball me. I don't get this lowball offer. But when I submitted the offer, I had evidence of everything that I'm looking at. in terms of what I'm helping them determine. You know, we looked at these 3 homes. This is their options. They like your home, but at this price. And we submit the offer. The cool thing about that, when you put evidence with it, I don't get the pushback. Like, how many times have you heard of a seller get mad at you as a buyer agent because you lowballed them or something like that? Now it's about, here's the evidence that I have. So we look at the comparative market analysis, seller disclosures, property and title reports, CC&Rs and HOA docs. Did you know I ask for the seller disclosures? I don't always get them, but I ask them before we put an offer on the house. How many of you do that? Yeah. I get the HOA docs, I get the CC&Rs, I look at things before we put an offer on the house. Okay.
So how do you present that? The leverage based on evidence.
In the email when I send the offer, but I first call, so I've already called the seller agent before I made the appointment, right? And I talked to them about how my clients love their house, and I have all these questions for them. That actually sets the stage. Oh yeah, you've got a 20-year-old house and they haven't done anything to update any of these appliances. So that sets the stage for it. Then I call the agent back. We're thinking about making an offer on your house. I just want you to know that. They're excited about it. So I'm doing my due diligence, doing some research here. I found a few of these other things out here. We've looked at these other homes. I actually show them in my email, here's the other homes they're considering. If we can get your house for this price, then you're on the top of the list. What does that also tell them? If we can't get it at this price, your house is no longer on the top of the list. So it depends on how anxious they are to sell the house. So we actually made an offer on the house for $630 so it was $640, but for 3%, which would have been $19,000 something. So when they countered the offer, which they did, they gave us $10,000 in concessions instead of $19,000 in concessions. You always want to give them room to win. If you don't give them room so that they can win, they feel like they've lost on their end, and then they won't cooperate through the rest of it. So you always want to have a buffer in there or a room where they can come back. And I talked to them about that because they're like, well, my client feels like it's a little bit low. And I said, well, you know, what do you think about that concession? If you want to, you know, bring it back at a lower offer, then he calls me. Before we do anything, we're talking back and forth. How many of you do that with your sellers? I'm doing back and forth negotiation with them before they send that counter. If you're not doing that and you're just going back and forth with emails and contracts, it makes it where people just don't like each other. So I'm talking to them through that process, and it works well. And then we have room to negotiate. If you don't give them room to negotiate and they don't feel like they've gotten something better out of it, because right now they're excited, but they gave me $36,000 in a lower price on that property. Did you have a question? No. Okay. Then I tell them, so this is what it looks like. So this is how I'm ending this. Sorry, we're getting really close to the end of this. I say, this is what it looks like next steps. Basically what I've done through this whole process is I haven't tried to sell them. Or sell me, I should say. What have I done for them? Explain the process. I've explained this is what we do, right? And as I've done that, they're seeing what? Value based on, I didn't know agents did this. I thought you were just going to open the door. I had no idea that this is what you're going to help me compare loans. And you've got other lenders that, like this last client, they already had an approval, not an approval, a pre-qualification from their lender that's a friend of the family. So much so that his brother, their daughter married his brother's son, or yeah, if I got that right. But that's how close of a relationship it was. How many people have relationships with lenders and agents all over the place? But now I'm taking it out of the realm of who you like and who you have a relationship with to what? Where you're getting the best value. And so now they're seeing me as the agent that's offering the best value. It was funny what the husband said. And he's out of town. He's like, I think he was in Singapore or something. So it was like late at night that we're talking. He hadn't come back yet. And he even told me, he goes, yes, we really like this lender because he's basically a member of the family. But this is an investment and it's about money. And he says, and that's what we're going to go with your guy, right? And he's letting me know that. When you can offer that level of service, you're going to set yourself apart. It's not, I'm telling you, as much as you think it's about relationships, that's status quo. Have good relationships, but make it about an understanding of what they're getting in terms of what their end goal is. And then you have a value that they will tell everybody about. By the way, they've already referred me to 2 of their friends that want to start investing in properties. And why did they do that?
They trust you.
Because I didn't just open up a door, I showed them how I'm going to help them, right? So then I tell them in this process, okay, so when you accept an offer, right? Then you have earnest money deposit. If you heard about that, we'll get that. I want them to get ready because you know what I want them to do is I want them to see 4 houses and then what? Put an offer on a house, and then we're going to go through this process. And it's kind of cool when I walk them through it in this way. Most of them are making the decisions that quickly. They're like ready to go. I don't work with a lot of buyers, but the last 4 or 5 buyers I've worked with, I've only gone out one time, showed them 3 or 4 homes, they put an offer on a home, and then we went forward. Because that's what they wanted anyway. But they thought that they had to do it all themselves, and they can't make really good rational decisions when it's very emotional. So I'm helping them take the emotion and put it into a rational, SOP, a standard procedure for how you go about it. I'm going to help you along the way. And they appreciate that. How many of you have kids that are all over the place and they're all irrational and everything, and you give them structure and all of a sudden they succeed and they get happy and you know what I'm saying? I hate to say it that way, but sometimes our buyers are like these crazy kids running all over the place. It's all emotional, and you give them structure, and then all of a sudden everything works. Does that make sense? Is that weird way to say it? So then I'd say you're going to go through due diligence, then you have an appraisal. I explain the process through here. Most of them don't get all this. They think I just put an offer on a house and then somehow magically I buy it and it happens. I remind them of everything that's going to happen here at this point. I'm going to help them. Then I'm going to say, here's 3 things that are going to happen at closing and move-in. You're going to have a settlement. You're going to be picking up the keys. I explained, a lot of them need to know this. Even Jeff, the clients are asking, when do we get the keys? They don't know the difference between settlement and funding and recording. When do you usually give keys out? After recording, and that's going to be, it's on the rep sheet. You explain what that is as well, and then move in. And then we found the best gift, by the way, that we give our clients. Security is super important to them, so we give them a keyless door entry to their home, and we even install it, and we show them how to reprogram their garage doors. That's actually really, really good. And then with our title company, they let them know how to set up their utilities for their particular area. Sorry, going through this really quick because I want to get finished here. I know I'm going over time. Are we all right? So I can finish this up? Okay. So then the last thing I need them to do is what? Sign the agreement. So I tell them, I'm so excited to show you these homes. I bring the homes back up, say, okay, this is our schedule. This is what we're going to do. Tomorrow we're going to look at this home, and this home, or tonight or whatever. I try to get this appointment, at least a few hours or a day before we actually go out and look at the properties. I can go through the whole presentation usually in about 20 to 30 minutes, but sometimes they ask more questions. It's fine, but now I'm going to get them a signed agreement. So I tell them, as you know, I don't get paid until after you buy a home. So my payment comes afterwards. So just like a lawyer, and I say this, just like a lawyer or someone that does a professional service like that doesn't get paid till after, I have to have a signed agreement with you. As a matter of fact, I can't even legally show you a house until that agreement is signed. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then I tell them this. Now, I'm going to get to a point where maybe we cut this out of the film part because this is how I explain it. And I don't want brokers to get mad at me. You're a broker, and some of you are brokers in here. Basically, what I say is this. And I'm not saying this is what you should do. Talk to your broker. Please don't get me in trouble for this. But basically what I say right now is that we do 12 months on this. It usually doesn't take that long. Usually you're under contract sooner, but if something comes up, or something like that, and you have to take a little break from it, so we just always do a 12-month contract, okay? I just breeze over that in a second. Okay, and then the second thing I say, and I bring up the contract, by the way, you can even show it if you're in, on Zoom video. Second thing I say, and then the other thing you're going to notice here is that it's a commission, right, that needs to be paid because I don't get paid until after it sells. This is where I have to be careful. But I say in many cases, I can't say in all cases, I can't say it's guaranteed or anything like that. In many cases, the commission is paid for by the seller. And I even tell them, I have actually never had it where it wasn't. I just say that, but again, please don't get me in trouble for that. But I just say, in many cases that it's paid for by the seller. We negotiate that with your offer, right? And that's what I tell them. We negotiate it with the offer. We basically put in there that commission so they pay it. Now, for the buyer, they like that because of what? I don't have to pay for it. So we negotiate that with the offer, right? So that they pay for that. And that's what is happening a lot. So you have to be careful how you say that kind of thing. And then I say to them, it says 3% here, right? So I just want you to understand, if I don't put 3% here and they're willing to pay it, because a lot of people are paying 3%, sometimes a little bit less, but usually they're willing to pay that 3%. If I don't put 3% there, I can't get that. I can only get as much as that amount is listed here. So I always put in 3%. And then I tell them this, and this is where it gets a little dicey too. I say, sometimes if they're in a situation where they can't quite pay that much, or we're negotiating something and it's a little bit less than that, I'm usually good with just whatever they're willing to pay. That's what I say to them. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to say when it comes to all this, because that's where it gets really dicey. But the key to this last part is what? What do you have to get done? They have to get it signed. If they're in person with me, I have them sign it. I like them when they actually sign it. You know why? Because a wet signature, something that they actually do, not with a click of a mouse, but with their hand, gives a little bit more impact to them that I'm your agent, right? So they really understand that. But if it's electronic and I'm on the, a Zoom call with them, I actually do send them that right there, so they have it right there. I cannot show you the house until you sign this. Every once in a while they say, okay, we'll get back to you. We just want to look through it. Many times they just sign it, especially in person. If I just hand it over to them, they usually just sign it, okay? Whew, I got through all that. What I'm trying to impress on you is that your ability to showcase what you can offer beyond the expectations is what sets you apart from all the other agents out there. I hope all of you in here, right, have something like this, that you can impress upon your buyers what you do beyond just being a glorified door opener. Because right now, that's what a lot of our clients think of real estate agents. I'm just getting you to open up that door. I know you do a ton more, but they don't. And when we start talking about our negotiating prowess, if you don't show them exactly how you negotiate a deal and what all that means, if you talk about your years of experience or you're just a super nice person, it's still hard for them to, swallow that $15,000 fee that goes along with that. So this is a really great way for you to showcase it. If you don't have the tech set up, you're also going to be in a tough space. Now, and I'm sorry that I went over. We got lunch here for you, and I'll have Scott come over. Just one last little piece of advice on this. As you think of yourself as a high-level valued buyer agent, you've got to make sure that the technology that supports that and to get them to make those quicker decisions are in place. So get your SOPs in place. Follow it will help you to do that, and you'll get more buyers, okay?